The Unhappy Hour on the new AmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way Galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unhappy Hour. And yes, I gotta tell you, this is an unhappy hour right now. Just in the course of about 2 days, a whole lot of stuff went wrong if you're a fan of the Indians, Browns, Cavs, and Buckeyes, all right? Yes, the Cavs are on a little bit of a winning streak. I'll take it. That's good. However, Kosta Karageorge found dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound in a dumpster shortly after he sent text messages to his mother. We'll get into that. And the Ohio State player, just really bad news. Came right around the time J.T. Barrett, the quarterback for the team, was injured against Michigan, out for the season. Done. His Heisman campaign over. Question marks as to whether the Buckeyes can crack into the top 4 with this new playoff system. And then, of course, the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns didn't do themselves any favors. Now we got a quarterback controversy. Johnny Manziel comes in and gets a touchdown. And here we are. Brian Hoyer just really has not played very good football from the quarterback position for the past 3 games or so. And now the Browns, who used to be in first place, I mean, we're sitting here in last place. Luckily, the Steelers and the Ravens both lost, but, I mean, we got bigger problems right now. So, I mean, it's been a really rough, obviously losing a game is a little different than someone losing his life. I do want to cover that story, and prayers to the family. And if you're having problems, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or hurting someone else, you call someone, get some help. NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness. We interviewed somebody from there around the time Junior Seau killed himself. And apparently this Kosta Karageorge had some traumatic brain injury / concussion issues in the past, so they're going to analyze him. I'll get into this story in a minute, but if you're having trouble, actually, here, let me just take a look. Let me just pull up a search for NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. I guess that's probably what I'm looking for here. Where's it show? Where's it? Contact us. National Alliance on Mental Illness. Hope starts with you. Yeah, there's a helpline. 1-800-950-NAMI. That's 1-800-950-NAMI. Once again, that's 1-800-950-6264. 1-800-950-6264 if you're having some problems. Yeah, don't do that. If you can avoid it. These things leave just horrible broken pieces behind. The people who are friends and family with someone after they've committed suicide, there's a lot of pain that doesn't really go away, and it takes a very long time. So if you're having issues and thinking about hurting yourself or someone else, call 1-800-950-6264. Do something, man. So prayers and thoughts to Kosta Karageorge's family with the Ohio State team. It's been really rough the past couple days, So, anyhow, to talk about all of these stories, we're going to bring in special guest Rob Trautman, host of Sports on Tap. We'll just kind of pick it up. I don't know. We'll start with Kosta.
Brian, always good to hear from you.
Rob Trautman, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm living the dream, but unfortunately, I introed the show saying that this really is the unhappy hour. J.T. Barrett out of the season, broken ankle. It could have been a Heisman contender. We might have cracked the top 4, but who knows if we're going to get in there now. Now we're on our third-string quarterback, Kosta Karageorge. Obviously, that's where I got to start, and of course the Browns lost. So it really is the unhappy hour. A lot of bad stuff going on. I was wondering how much you followed the Ohio State program over the weekend, both with the win against Michigan and with Kosta Karageorge being found dead of an apparent suicide.
Well, yeah, I followed that pretty closely, and with Kosta, I mean, that's just a tough situation. That's a kid that was a wrestler for 3 years, and this is his first year on as a walk-on on the Ohio State football team, and I think he actually played in one game so far this year, sparingly, I believe, in the Penn State game. But, a kid that had concussions, and I believe it was in wrestling that he got the concussions, and, sending a text to his mom as it was reported on all over the news. I mean, that's just, anytime you deal with something like that, I mean, I have no clue how that mother feels, but, I mean, it's just a terrible situation. Getting a text from him saying he's an embarrassment, and then later finding him in with a gun next to him in a dumpster. I mean, that's just no way to go. And you feel bad for the family. It's just a tough situation. Even for Ohio State, for some of the students that knew him, the athletes, and nobody knows what that kid went through, but. End that way. Hopefully he found some peace now, and just a tough situation there at Ohio State.
Yeah, and, I can say every situation is different, but I do know of a situation close and personal where there were late-night text messages and then a suicide. And, everything is different, but I led the show just kind of saying, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or somebody else, call for help. I read an 800 number for NAMI for mental illness, if someone's feeling that way. I mean, it's just the damage you leave behind. I mean, here I am like a year later with the situation that hit close to home for me with someone who took their own life. And I'll tell you what, the people involved, the family and friends, they are no better off now than they were back then. And it is just a tsunami, the ripple effect that a suicide can have. But this Kosta Karageorge, he was having problems. He was having problems. And I think the mom was saying that he was seeming disoriented, and apparently now a neuropathologist is going to look for signs of traumatic brain injury. And it reminded me of Junior Seau. Obviously totally different. One's a Hall of Famer,
yeah.
One's a college kid that barely played, but still. I'm just wondering how much of an impact these concussions really have on mental stability, Rob.
Well, and that's the thing, and the NFL and college and all sports really are really taking a serious look at concussions. And like you said, the Junior Seau incident, I think that really opened a lot of eyes. And, he actually had where they can take a look at his brain afterwards and kind of see what was going on. But, anytime you deal with a situation like this, like you said, it is going to hit some people close to home. And, there are a lot of people out there that might feel like they have no one to turn to and they have no hope. But there's always hope for someone. And, I know it's maybe not it's easy to say but not easy to do for some of these people. But, giving a phone call and just talking to somebody, like you said, giving that phone number is a pretty important phone number, and it could help save lives, having them talk to people and maybe guide them in the right direction to show that there is hope and there is help for you out there. There's always help for people out there. You just have to maybe look for it a little bit, but there's always help hotlines out there for pretty much every situation. So if you feel like you need somebody to talk to, or you need a hand, talk to a friend, and maybe you can get help somewhere. But doing something like that, you don't know what the person's going through, but you hope nobody else out there has to go through that, or they can at least learn from this situation.
Yeah, and in this article here, I'm reading, it says that if a person has depression or an anxiety disorder in the past, it's often the case that the concussion seems to exacerbate it. These injuries don't occur in a vacuum. People bring their own history, their own past history into the injury. Correcting this, the same report that I heard that he had played in a game, the Ohio State spokesman corrected it, saying that he had not played in any games this year, which is obviously something you and I both thought until I took a look at this article as well. But yeah, the Susan Karageorge, she told police that her son had several concussions, a few spells of being extremely confused, and then the text message specifically said, quote, "I am sorry if I am an embarrassment, but these concussions have my head all effed up." So, I mean, he specifically references concussions as to being an embarrassment and a large contributing factor as to why he wanted to take his own life. I mean, it's just, it really does, it's horrible all around. And, moving from life to death matters here. Obviously, this is way more relevant and important and serious. But, I mean, you look at J.T. Barrett now. Let's roll over to that component of the game. Normally this time of year, the Browns are looking at draft picks. The Cavs have sucked for the past 4 years. And we're talking about beating Michigan, a decent Michigan team or something, and, looking forward. But now I almost completely forgot that we beat Michigan and beat them pretty well. Late third quarter on. It was way too close most of the game. But, I mean, all we're talking about now is J.T. Barrett broke his ankle, and now we're on to our third-string quarterback. So, I mean, talk about the game a little bit, what you saw in general, and then, of course, specifically what Ohio State's having to deal with now at the quarterback position.
Let's first start with, Michigan. Devin Gardner all year, I thought, had a pretty tough year. It looked like this is a kid that's athletic, that could be a solid quarterback for Michigan, and he just never amounted to it. But he went, 22 of 32, he had 233 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, and I thought he played very well. And Michigan overall, I mean, they scored 28 points. They got a late touchdown that, is kind of in scrub time a little bit there. But I thought Drake Johnson, the running back for Michigan, he had 15 carries for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I thought he was pretty effective as a runner. He's a guy that runs downhill. He's pretty strong, not looking to juke and get out of the way. He's going to try to run over you. But Michigan's offense was impressive. And Ohio State's defense obviously wasn't at the top of their game. All day. But, this is a team that's gone now offensively. I'm talking Ohio State football, and the loss of J.T. Barrett, we can talk that, it's not that big of a loss, because you have guys in back of him. But, I mean, when you start going to your third-string quarterback, and Cardale Jones is a guy that, is from Glenville High School in Cleveland, and, he's been behind J.T. Barrett now all year, so he has been preparing as a backup. But anytime you lose a player like J.T. Barrett, I mean, a freshman that they thought they were going to redshirt because Braxton Miller was going to be here, I mean, this guy played unbelievable all year, and he had 176 yards and a touchdown before he was taken out. But, not only is he a stud, I mean, passing-wise, he's pretty consistently good that way, but he's a leader on the field, and you can tell this offense just feels really comfortable with him. He spreads the ball out, and when he needs to run, he does. He doesn't always run, but when he does, he's so effective, and he knows when to get down, but he puts his head down, and he can take some hits. He's a pretty big guy, so J.T. Barrett's just such a huge loss for this team, and I mean, I guess the one positive here is the fact that it happened versus Michigan, because now for the 14 playoff, that they have now an opportunity to see Cardale Jones in the Big Ten championship, and let's see what this kid can do. He was only 2 of 3 passing, and he had some rushing yards, but if he puts up some pretty good numbers in the championship game and leads Ohio State to a win, maybe the committee that judges these games will say, there's not much of a drop-off there, and, this is a legit team under Cardale Jones. So, maybe it gives them a little time to look at it. And, other than J.T. Barrett going out in the Big Ten championship game, say, in the fourth quarter, then you're looking at, well, this team's definitely not going to be the same with that. But, they still have running. Look at Ohio State. They had Ezekiel Elliott, 121 yards, and Barrett had 89 yards. Both had 2 touchdowns rushing. I mean, you still have a good running game, but Cardale Jones is going to have to be a leader and going to have to spread the ball and be more effective as a passer as well. Can't just run the football. So let's see what Urban Meyer and this team has in store offensively for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, it's a good point you just brought up with the championship game. At least it didn't happen then, because then it's like, oh, people might freak out. It's like, see how the team performs with Cardale Jones. who would have thought J.T. Barrett was going to step in after that one loss? First in the preseason when Braxton Miller goes down, you just say, "Oh God, here goes the entire season." You got to be freaking kidding me! He was a Heisman contender. He had to be in the running for a Heisman. Great, that's just fantastic. Then J.T. Barrett comes in, first couple games, and then they drop that early one, second game in at home, and then J.T. Barrett got his act together and just started dominating. And, in fact, J.T. Barrett passed Drew Brees, a guy you might remember his name, Hall of Fame. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame as a quarterback for the Saints.
No, I've never heard of him.
Yeah, who's that guy? Who's that clown? Joe Bosserman? Joe Bosserman? Is that? No, a little more skilled than that. But J.T. Barrett as a freshman freshman, right? J.T. Barrett? Or is he sophomore?
Yeah, he's a freshman.
Yeah, I thought so. Sometimes the red shirt confuses me if it's freshman or sophomore. But anyway, he broke the touchdowns accounted for record. He's been responsible for more touchdowns in Big Ten history than anyone in the history of Big Ten. So I guess my specific question regarding that is, do you think that J.T. Barrett will get Heisman votes in playing every game but the championship with a broken ankle? I mean, I think his body of work stands up with a Mariota or anybody else for that matter. I think he jumped into a tough situation. I don't know that he could win it, but do you think he could receive any first-place votes just based on his body of work already? Just saying, hey, sorry, you missed out on 2 games because of a broken ankle, but this guy rocked it. He deserves kudos. Or do you think doesn't have a chance?
I don't think he should be, in my opinion. He should at least receive a vote. And that could be possible, but in my opinion, I just don't see it. I think he's played an unbelievable year, and I think he no doubt should be considered. And actually, Barrett looks like he's a sophomore in his first year, varsity, it says here. But you look at Cardale Jones, he's actually a junior, so he's a little bit more experienced. But, I mean, J.T. Barrett, just the work he's done this year, 34 touchdowns so far this year and almost 3,000 yards passing, and he averages almost 236 yards a game pretty much by himself. This kid can pass. He's been effective passing, too. That's the one thing that I think I was impressed with more this year. I wasn't sure what kind of arm this kid had. I thought he had a good arm by scouts in what they said about J.T. Barrett, but I wasn't sure how effective his passes were going to be. And, every game is about 60% passing. He hasn't had one game this year under 60% passing. Minnesota was his lowest game at 60%, and that's in cold weather. And there has been some games, I was at the Indiana game, and I thought he had an off game there, but he still threw for 71% and 300 yards passing. That's what I mean. He can have an off game and still be really effective. And those are the games, though, that you're impressed with this Ohio State team. The close games that eventually they figure it out and they don't give up. It's pretty easy, when you're down at halftime and to say you're losing and then come through in the end. And I think this Ohio State team, maybe they haven't played the greatest non-conference schedule, and that loss to Virginia Tech really hurt them. But overall, they continually win, and this Wisconsin game, this is exactly what Ohio State needed, was for the Wisconsin Badgers to continually win and be a highly ranked team going into the Big Ten championship team. Because now, with a win, Ohio State could possibly get into the number 4 seed. It still could be a long shot, but I think with a win, they're making a statement there.
Yeah, and I don't know. TCU, Baylor, you look at Mississippi State, you look at, Alabama was trailing a lot of that game. Of course, they pulled it out in the end. Florida State has been flirting the entire season. You can't knock Florida State for still being undefeated, but I'll tell you what, whether any of those allegations... By the way, have you heard any of these allegations about Jameis Winston, unsubstantiated reports about point shaving in the first half of games? Totally unsubstantiated, but have you heard any rumblings about that? I was just curious.
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I've heard so many things about Jameis Winston. It's one thing after another with that guy, and it seems like it's getting him a little bit. The last game, I think he had 4 interceptions, and they keep talking about him in the NFL. I'll tell you what, if I'm an NFL team, this guy seems like he's in controversy every week. If it's not point shaving, it's other allegations. He's standing on a table screaming all kind of profanities and getting in trouble with girls. Obviously, seems to be a popular one with him. But
yeah, I find it surprising or nearly impossible that the same guy that would jump up in the middle of the cafeteria and scream "F her right in the P," the letter P. Is the same guy that might be accused of sexually assaulting a female. I just find it so shocking that such an upstanding. I don't like Jameis Winston at all. There's so much surrounding him. I'm not a fan of his at all. But no, I mean I was just curious because you look at these teams in the top four. You can't knock Florida State because look. They won it last year, and they're still undefeated. Fine. But they look ridiculously vulnerable, and I could easily see them losing a game. I could easily see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of Florida State. They have had a lot of close games, and, seeing the way they played this year, I'm not impressed. But I do remember, when Ohio State was with Jim Tressel, and every game was a win by 1 or 2.
Yep.
And I think they ended up making it into the championship game, and they might even have won. I can't remember if they won that year. But,
yeah, I think that.
I do give them credit for going undefeated, and let's see how this plays out. But, I just can't see. If Florida State loses, they will be out of the top 4. There's no doubt. I think there's a reason that the committee hasn't voted them number 1 for being undefeated. They obviously aren't impressed maybe with their wins and how they're playing at this point in time. And, with a loss, I think that could easily slide, 1 or 2 teams maybe up in, at least 1 for sure. But, who knows with that number 4 team. If another team loses in there, you can see maybe 2 from the 5 and 6 spot just slide on in. I think this is really interesting with the 14 playoff. I think it's a great thing. It's a great start. I could see them eventually maybe going to, an 18 playoff or something like that eventually. But I think this is kind of a test to see how it goes. And right now, I think it's a great thing. Obviously, everyone's talking about it and who can get in and who might get in and who might fall out. There's a lot of talk, and I think it's really good for college football.
I think it's good too. I've been rooting for the playoff system for a while. However, I think I was just going to say the same thing you just did, was that I could see it going to like a 6-game system. The top 2 get a bye, or maybe an 8-team playoff. Because I think the cutoff at 2 was really subjective. The cutoff at 4, what's to say 5, 6, and 7 are much different. But really, when you're talking 7, 8, 9. Like, something went wrong. They really shouldn't be in the conversation. But, if it was 8 teams, maybe you could get an undefeated Marshall sneak in there or something and just give a Boise State a chance. Or, not this year, but previous seasons, let somebody jump in at 8 or 7 and then let the big boys play for it. So, I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, if the Buckeyes make it to the top 4, the system works. The system's perfect. Oh, I love this system. And if we're sitting there at 5, we're going to hate this thing and say, where's the BCS? Damn it.
And I think the SEC fans out there would gladly disagree with you and probably go nuts if Ohio State makes it in the top 4. And I'm not going to say that Ohio State is a top 4 team. And I'm a big Ohio State fan, but I'm not going to say that they're a top 4 team. But if they somehow figure out a way to get up there, according to the committee, they know obviously better than anybody out there. So let's see how it plays out. I think it's good for college football. It's a lot of fun, too.
It is. And there's a little bit more football left to play, so we'll see how it shakes out. But to wrap up the Buckeyes here, I just want to say, Cardale Jones, if you remember that name, it was a couple years ago. He sent out a tweet in October of 2012 saying, quote, "Why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We ain't come to play school. Classes are pointless." End quote. That was his famous quote. That's how I know Cardale Jones. I think he's a redshirt sophomore. I just looked up. He says sophomore, but I thought he's been here for 3 years, so he must have been redshirted as well. But
and maybe Barrett. I still think Barrett. This website might be a little off. I think Barrett is a redshirt freshman. I think he was redshirted, and it says he's probably a sophomore, but he's only 1 year of varsity. So, but yeah, I do remember that tweet, and let's just say it's one that we can forget, and I'm sure he's forgotten about that, and hopefully moved on and become a little more mature, because that was probably, he's lucky to still be on the team after that tweet, because that's just one that, That's why athletes sometimes maybe get a bad rap, and people say, they're going to skip out on class and be favored and stuff because of comments like that, and that's just ridiculous. We'll see. Cardale Jones, what are you going to fall back on after you're done playing at Ohio State? That's the real question.
Yeah, and that is the truth. This guy, his tweet became so famous it even showed up in a college textbook as an example of what a student athlete should not do in social media. But the quote here, I got this off Cleveland.com, plain dealer, obviously, kind of explaining this here. It's quote, Cardale, you talk about a changed guy, Urban Meyer said Tuesday after Ohio State got back to practice after a week off for spring break with the third practice of spring football. He was a guy who couldn't get out of his own way a couple of years ago, and now he's making progress in the classroom. You remember the famous tweet or whatever? It's a different guy. He had to be a different guy, or he wouldn't be here. And that quote there gives me a little bit of hope. Like, all right, I mean, come on, man. If I had Twitter when I was an 18-year-old, God almighty, the dumb things that I used to think, dumb things my friends would say and I would echo, and the dumb things I would just blurt out. It's like you got to really become social media savvy, knowing that this stuff's going to follow you around forever. So, I will give people the benefit of the doubt because I really haven't heard his name brought up, Cardale Jones, in anything bad since then.
True.
But on the flip side of it, the athlete's getting a bad name, not going to class. Well, I mean, it's the NFL that won't let you go straight, from high school into the pros. Maurice Clarett was challenging that, and LeBron James, who was, one of the last to go to the NBA from high school, and it's tough when you're trying to go professionally into a place where they force you to go to college for 2 years, and you don't want to play college. You want to play football. So, I mean, I get what he's saying, but it's a really dumb thing to say. It sounds dumb. It sounds like a third-string dumb quarterback that's not – but you know what? Hey, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I was surprised with what J.T. Barrett did, and we'll see what happens with Cardale Jones moving forward. So I'll tell you what, I really want to get the venom out of my system. I want to get the pain out, the agony out of what happened to the Cleveland Browns. But since we talked so much Buckeyes here, I just want to do a quick reset, and so we can split these shows up in post-production as two different shows. Tell everybody really quick where they can check out your Sports on Tap program, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. We're on Podomatic. We're on iTunes. It's called Sports on Tap. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, and we're from Cleveland, Ohio. We do all kinds of local podcasts talking about high school sports, but also do Cleveland sports, national sports, and if people want to follow me, I'm at Trauty at Trouty on Twitter, if they'd like to follow me.
Absolutely. So let's do this. We'll take a quick reset here, and we'll come back on the other side. We got to talk Cleveland Browns here on the TNAM Radio Network.
It's the Unhappy Hour.